Hello everyone, this is Becca from Willow Hill Designs. Welcome to my studio. And let's come in and see what I'm working on. I'm going to shut my door because my little dog may decide to start barking. Today I am working on a pictorial quilt, and I've had some requests to show this quilt and exactly how I tackle it. And so this is the design that I am working on for this quilt. And the first thing to do when making a pictorial quilt is to get your design. Whether you draw a design or you find something on the internet, that would be step number one, to have an idea of where you're going with your quilt. And for my daughter and son-in-law's quilt, I had drawn a scene and then enlarged it for them. For this quilt, I found an image on the internet, and sorry for the shakiness. This is, let me just zoom in a bit. This is the image that I found, and I loved that, and I thought, why reinvent the wheel? I'm going to use that image. So I took that image, and I have an app on my iPad which allows you to posterize a picture. And so I put this image in there, and then you can choose how large you would like this image to be. And so I chose, and it prints off in 8.5 by 11 sections, pages. And let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 across and 3 down. Let's see, maybe not quite a full 3 down. And so this quilt is 28 by 33, and I felt that was a good size because I'll be adding borders to it. So the first thing is to get your image and then enlarge it. However, unless you'd like to draw it larger yourself, that's fine as well. And what I did on my on this quilt is I just moved the house from this side to this side. I kind of changed the picture around. But so that was the beginning. And once you get your image chosen and you size it to the size that you would like, then what I do generally, I mean, you can work off of those pages that are taped together. Once you posterize it and you tape your pages together, I generally trace out the images that I want, and then I transfer it to a large sheet of paper like this. And this sheet of paper is 36 inches this way by a number of feet on the roll. I was given this roll by one of the companies that I used to print my patterns on for sale. And so I took a section of this paper, and with the light box, I traced my design and how I wanted it on this paper. So that's important, to get the scale and the size that you would like for your quilt. Once you have that, I consider this my master copy now, my master pattern. So from there, I go, excuse me, ahead, and I label the images on here, just because it makes it so much easier when you're constructing each of the elements, and then you have to place them. Pardon me. It helps to have everything labeled. So here, this is path number 2. This is greenery number 2, so not necessarily grass, but greenery. This is grass number 1. Greenery again, maybe some bushes and shrubs. Grass number 1. This is grass number 2 here. And trees, I will number trees. Tree number 1, 2. All these trees. And even the trunks, everything gets labeled. The stump, I don't have to, that I pretty much know, but rocks. things like that. All of these trees, all of the elements, the roof, the house, the cabin, log cabin, everything, the barrel will all, I mean, that's identifiable enough. And the pump, the same thing for the pump. But once I get all the elements labeled, I begin to start constructing the elements. And I suppose I should say, before I go ahead and do any of that, I'll just move this paper for a minute. Excuse me, I hope I'm not making anyone dizzy. Before you go ahead and begin constructing or drawing any of your elements, you really need to choose your sky, your background for whatever your pictorial image is going to be. In my case, I had to choose a background, and I bought and went through several sky fabrics till I found one that I was pleased with. Sometimes when they're printing them, they print the clouds every so many inches, and you can just tell it's a repetition of those images, and it doesn't look real. Where this one had a very nice real element to it. And in my daughter's quilt, I pieced the background with diamonds, and I did sort of a color wash of fabrics, sort of emulating a sun shining up here and then coming down to deeper colors, blues and purples. I didn't do that here because a lot of the sky is covered with the mountains and everything. So before you go ahead to do any of your images, I would get my sky fabric and the color, because that really does set the tone for your quilt. And then choose your grasses. That would be the next thing. I would say the sky and the foreground would be important things to take care of. So once you've gotten those chosen, then I begin taking care of and making all of the elements. And what I use to construct and create all of these elements is Floriani washable and fusible stabilizer. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. And this is a fusible interfacing, and it is washable, and generally it will disappear. Most of it will disappear if you're making a quilt that's going to be washed. This is a wall hanging and it won't be washed, but what I do is I put the fusible side up, because that's what's going to be ironed to the back of your fabric. And so the right side of your fabric, because that image is ironed to the back side, the right side of the fabric will have the image just as it's drawn here, because that piece is ironed to the back of your fabric, and that's the image that you drew that is facing your fabric from the back side. So I will just go ahead and trace these elements, the trees, each one, and construct them individually. If I'm using, you can use a permanent marker. I use micron pens to trace these images, and then I would cut them out and iron it to the back side of the fabric. If it was a lighter fabric and I was a little bit worried about that line showing through from the front, then I would use a Frixion pen on here. And I would cut it all out first, right on the line, cut it out, and then iron it to my fabric. Where if you're using a permanent marker, you can just do a rough cut around the image, iron it to the back of your fabric, and then cut on that line. You can see through this. It's see-through, so you can see your line. So that is the way that I like to construct these elements. I love needle turn applique. I really enjoy doing it, but it is just so very time consuming. And a quilt with this many images on it, I mean, it would just literally take forever. It would take a year to do. I mean, just the rocks alone here, there's 29 rocks that border this river. There's rocks and bushes and foliage on the trees and the stream, and I mean, just so much. This water pump, the axe, and there's a lot. So this is really a nice, efficient way to get your images with a nice turned edge. I'm not crazy about raw edge to do this whole thing raw edge. It's been my experience that when you do the raw edge applique and you put the Steam-A-Seam 2 or light Steam-A-Seam 2 on the back of your fabric and then fuse it down and then you stitch around the edges of those images, there's always little tiny holes from the needle that you see, and I don't care for that look. I like the turned edges, and then I use an invisible stitch to go around the edges of the image, and I attach them with my machine, matching the thread to the element that I'm stitching down. So, and using this method really does let you accomplish very detailed images. Now here's this tree number 9 here, and of course my master pattern lets me know that it will go right here. And again, this is not anything set in stone. This is a suggestion. If you don't like it there when you're putting your quilt together, it certainly can be changed. Here's a couple of more trees. And because I have my master pattern, I know where these will be placed and what they're in relation to, what other elements on the quilt. But it kind of gives me an idea for colors and lets me see and look at the scale of things. And if I want to change colors, I can do that as well. This is a tree that is coming up behind the house that will show up. And here's another tree that's behind a mountain, one of the lower mountains. And here's a little tree down here. And using this method, it really does let you accomplish great detail, I think, when making these images. And I have little stems here for the fir trees. So those are already constructed and ready to go. And also the purpose of this master pattern is so that you can put the light box under your quilt, your sky and your grass fabric, and you can put lines on there to show you where these elements should go. So that helps where to place the mountains and the trees and the cabin. Not crazy about this. I'm not crazy about this porch here. I think this porch needs some work, but I'll see. I'll have to work on that. It's not quite right, but I think it's off a little bit. But the good thing is that I can work on this before I put it down. And the way that you do this, and I will do a separate video on how to accomplish these elements using the Floriani washable stabilizer or other applique type products. But it's pretty much self-explanatory in that you cut the element out and then you cut around the element with maybe 1/4 inch, but in some cases I'm cutting 1/8 of an inch on these little tiny branches and trees. I'm cutting maybe 1/8 of an inch for the seam allowance to go under and fold over this shape. And I will show how to do that. There's some tips and tricks to know to get a nice smooth edge. And then these can be put down with a machine applique stitch with the invisible stitch, which is very nice. And so again, the nice part about having this master pattern is that you can decide what elements you want to leave in and what you want to change. Now, on this image, they have a buck standing sideways and a little doe or a little baby deer off next to that buck. And on my image, I decided to change it to a buck that's facing out, and then the little baby deer here. Again, you can just change however you'd like it to look. You get a nice idea for the flow of the picture and what elements you'd like there. And this river, rather than coming from the right up there, I had it come from the left down here, coming down, and then sort of empties into a little pool here with some ducks and a loon. And I think I added this little fence. No, that fence is there as well. I think they had a pot of flowers up here, and I put a barrel, like a rain barrel here, to catch water. But then again, I may put flowers in there, who knows, not quite sure. But right now I have all of the trees and tree trunks pretty much finished. And then I will next start to work on the fir trees. I think that'll be next. And then I'll just keep choosing elements, and you can jump around and choose whatever you'd like if you want to begin constructing all the rocks or all whatever element is in your picture. I think I'm going to leave these because these look like these are going to be pretty tedious to do all this. So I may get the river done. But I think after the fir trees, I'm going to go right to the cabin, because it's important to get the color of the cabin right. And I think I'm going to use this fabric there's different shaded tones on that fabric, but I think it looks like, I don't know if you can see, it looks sort of like a redwood log. It does have some nice detail in it. And so I will construct the logs, and then I will put some chinking in between them. But it's so important, once you choose your sky color and your grass color, the next big thing for me would be to have the cabin be the right color. There are gray browns, there are red browns, there are yellow browns, there are the grayish bluish browns. There's all different colors, and you need something that harmonizes with all of the other colors you've chosen. So doing this method where they're standalone elements, for now they're all completed, I can plug them in and see how they look and see whether I like them or not. Colors really have to harmonize in this. I've already rejected 3 mountains that I just didn't care for them. So 3 mountains have been rejected already. I'll just take these off of here. These trees. The mountains were a little bit tricky. I'm going to move this again. Please excuse me if I'm making anyone dizzy. Holding the camera with one hand and trying to move things with the other. Because some of these mountains are in the distance, I wanted them to be kind of, you know, the lighter gray and misty looking. So I wanted those colors to be lighter, and sometimes you have to use the back of the fabric. Now this fabric in particular here is very dark on the right side, and it's a great fabric. I would have liked to use it, but it was just much too dark for the look that I wanted. So the wrong side of the fabric really worked out quite nicely. And these are flowers, but they almost look like the ridges that come down a mountain, the ridges that are formed when the plates come together. And this is the same fabric here, and it looks like that top portion of a mountain where there might be ridges and things, even though these are flowers and leaves. I think they add a nice element. And this was a very nice fabric. This is the same as this one, just turned a little bit. And there are different portions of the fabric that I could choose. This was a little bit higher up where you didn't see any trees, not as much definition. And then this mountain has a few different colors in it. And as I was saying, I draw these images on here with my friction pen so that I know where to place the elements when I begin placing everything down. And it's not anything that is set in stone. You don't have to keep it that way. If you feel comfortable moving something, of course, that's the beauty of these friction pens. You can just iron it off. And that's what I did here. And the mountains I've shifted a tiny bit because I changed a couple of the mountains. These were partially trees here, and I added 2 more mountains in here. There'll be a tree here that will cover this sort of little opening in here. But on lighter colors, the friction pens work really well. But I would say don't use a friction pen on the darker fabrics, because when you iron it off, it will leave a ghost line. It will leave a sort of a whitish line on there, and unless you're going to stitch over that, or if you're going to place another element over that, I wouldn't use the friction on dark fabrics. It definitely would leave a mark. And I would use a chalk marker if you need to mark anything. Now this piece of fabric, I just took advantage of the shading in the fabric to have sort of a lighter face to the mountain and a darker face kind of away from the sunlight. So you can do that as well rather than piecing. Up here I pieced, but in here I was kind of limited in the amount of fabric that I had. This was an older panel. It was hard to come by. But you can even take advantage of the fabrics and the shadings in them. This is a batik that I felt looked very rocky and mountainous. This is the same as this. And this one had some darker elements in here. And so I just pieced some pieces over that, because a lot of this will be covered by other elements in the foreground, but you'll still get that idea of the misty background. And then the next thing to choose would be your grasses or your foreground, whether it's rocky or grasses or sandy, if it's a beach, whatever it might be. I chose to use 4 different strips of fabric because one strip sometimes will just look like a flat color and strip of fabric. So on here there are 4 different pieces. There's this one. This is actually a wood grain, but I liked the movement and the color that seemed to graduate down into this and then we're coming lighter where the sun might be shining more here on these lighter. And these are just strips of fabric, and I just sort of curved the edges a little bit so that they weren't straight strips, just little gentle curves on them, just to sort of give a little bit of movement. These are jelly roll strips, these last two. These are from Stonehenge, and they are supposed to be stone-like fabrics, but I thought they worked very nicely for grass. And I felt we were, darker and then coming in the foreground lighter and brighter, maybe in the sunshine. So that really, I felt, worked. I was happy with that. Now, I didn't stitch these mountains down. They're not stitched to the background yet because I may want to move them up or down depending on the cabin and how everything looks. So these are just temporarily pinned here. And same thing with the grass. The grass isn't stitched down yet, or this foreground here. But the mountains are all stitched together using an invisible stitch on the sewing machine. So these are all one element. These are all attached. These mountains, they're one large piece, but not sewn to the background yet. So they're stable. They're not going anywhere. And same thing with these grasses. These are all stitched with an invisible stitch on the sewing machine, which if you use a color that blends in with the fabric, it really does sort of go away. And again, if I had to hand stitch all of this, I mean, it would take me forever, where I can do it on the sewing machine and it's done fairly quickly. And I'll just say one more thing here. Before I place my sky and my foreground, I take a piece of white fabric, like a white muslin, a light white fabric, and I draw all the elements out on that fabric using a light box from my master pattern. And by doing that again, when I go to place all of these elements on, I know what section they should be in and how much room they should be taking, where to place them to stay within my 33 by 28 inches. So that is very helpful. There's just sort of a light outline of the cabin where that'll be placed. And again, nothing is set in stone, but it does give you a nice idea. And you can put the light box underneath your fabrics to see where these things go. And like with the trees here, I can see my lines up there. Oop. I can see my lines up there, and I can get those trees in place. Again, following the lines that I've drawn on here. And if I like where they are, then they'll stay. If not, I can just iron the lines away, and I'll put that there. And so that does help. And again, this tree will go right here because that little line right there is telling me that that's part of the tree. And this is smoke from the chimney of the cabin. So again, it does really help me to place all these things and get, I hope I'm not moving the camera too much and making anyone dizzy. I'm trying to do this with one hand and then show you with the other. So basically, that is my introduction to this, and this is how I approach making a pictorial quilt. And I will be doing a few other videos as I progress along, but I will definitely come back and show you how I make these elements, all the different elements, the barrel, the cabin. I'll show the log cabin, all of that. There will be that little log cabin right there will be also at the foot of these mountains down here. And that'll be off in the distance, I think somewhere here. I think I've decided to put that here. So I hope that this has helped in some way. I know it was requested to show my progress and where I am. This tree is leaning. It's not really where it goes. But, and I hope this gives you some inspiration to try your own hand at a pictorial quilt. They're really lots and lots of fun. And afterwards, they're a beautiful addition on your wall in your room. So thank you very much for joining me today, and wishing you many blessings, and I will join you in the next video. Bye for now.